So how do you pronounce your name, by the way?
It's Erald.
Erald, okay. So Erald, in response to your question, I'm going to give you this answer. You probably heard it before, so let's put it into context. And that is the teachings of the Buddha Dhamma, is known to be good in the beginning, good in the middle, and good in the end. Now, normally after that, it's used with right phrasing and timing. So that's an important quality to it. That when the Buddha, in fact, when it's taught with the right phrasing and timing, then it will be good in the beginning, good in the middle, and good in the end. I do not know of any Western practices right now that are good in the beginning.
Right.
And in the place that you're at right now, it's not all of that great, not all that good in the middle.
Right. And this is why we're having this discussion, because the one thing that helped me, and this is, hoping you can type for me, there is the anapanasati, 16 steps of mindfulness of breathing. And then there is the no self aspect, where there's nothing to be clung to. The aggregates are just processes. How do these two tie together? How does mindfulness of breathing and the processes happening by itself?
It doesn't. It must be manufactured. And it has to be manufactured, or another way of talking about it is a skill to be developed. Another verb to be used is train. To train the mind, to train the body, to train the Vedana, to train the feelings. This is a training exercise, and that's almost always missed out. It takes effort. That's why right effort is one of the Eightfold Noble Path. And in that regard, then, anapanasati, in order to practice anapanasati correctly. So first off, let me say this about correct practice. Correct practice is the only thing that's needed. You, in fact, do not even need a philosophical background under it. All it needs is correct practice. And that correct practice can be stated in very, very few words. And in fact, that's the object basically of Zen, is to stop all of the theoretical underpinnings and go directly into correct practice. But unfortunately, most people don't do correct practice because they're missing out on some of the key details. And Anapanasati Sutta, number 118 in the Majjhima Nikaya, has that complete thing. But it's complete, but it is a shorthand version. And within this one sutta, it is jam-packed full of the Four Noble Truths, most specifically the Eightfold Noble Path, and most specifically the most important qualities of the Eightfold Noble Path, is built right into the Anapanasati if you practice correctly. The second point is that the Vedana and the Sita aspects of the Anapanasati Sutta, when practiced correctly, leads one into the understanding of Paticcasamuppada. Paticcasamuppada is basically the way the mind works. Now, in Buddhism, it started out as fairly simple, the way that it's actually looked at in the Anapanasati. But over time, it became quite intricate with 12 full steps. But all of these 12 steps then are really based right in the five aggregates. And the five aggregates are based right into the four foundations of mindfulness. And Anapanasati is based right on the four foundations of mindfulness. And so you can see that this is actually an integrated package. It's an integrated whole. But it's an integrated whole that has a lot of quality of training to it. And one of the more important things that most people in the West misunderstand is, what is that training really all about? And so I can ask you that question. Why are you meditating? What's the point? What was your original goal?
I accidentally stumbled into some pleasurable states when I was younger, just focusing on my breath.
Well,
And
why don't you stumble onto those states about once every 10 minutes?
I forgot how to do it.
Maybe you never figured out how to do it.
It's fair.
Yeah, maybe it was an accident the first time, and you've been kind of looking after that ever since. But there's another quality is that you also recognize that life as it is, the way that almost everyone, in fact, everyone that you know, the way that they live life, it sucks.
Right.
Life sucks. In the 1980s, they even had a bumper sticker, life is shit, and then you die.
First
The
noble truth.
reason that, pardon?
First noble truth.
That's the first noble truth, exactly. Now, here's the second noble truth. Life sucks because we suck. And if we would stop sucking on things, life wouldn't suck. Isn't that profound?
That's it.
That's it. That's the whole show. Life stops sucking when we stop sucking on things. And what do we mean by sucking in this way is wanting things. We want to bring things to us, and we want to push other things away. And we want to know things, and we don't like it when we don't know. And so one of the things we want to draw to ourselves is real things, things that are knowledge, things that are wisdom, so that we can understand, because we don't like being confused. We don't like being in doubt. And so we want to draw knowledge to us. We suck knowledge. We suck on it. And because we suck on it, we suck at it.
To add that, even Dhamma knowledge, I get a lot of it. A lot of it. It's like, oh, I don't feel good. I'm just gonna listen to some Dhamma talks and like try to push the bad feeling away and try to like be more in the present and shift into something more pleasurable.
Yes, that's exactly correct. And so the question is, are you doing that correctly? Are you practicing that one thing correctly or not? But this is one of the things that's so beautiful about the teachings of the Buddha that is laid out most specifically in the oldest of the literature, including the Majjhima Nikaya and this Sutta Nipata, the Therigatha, the Therigatha, the Udana, those kinds of stuff is really, really excellent for weaving together. Now, the Dhamma is actually referred to Sampasa tree, I think it is. The Sampasa Sutta is the Buddha refers to the Dhamma, the entire teaching, is just like a handful of leaves, where all of human knowledge would be like a whole forest full of leaves and fall as they're falling down. But the handful of leaves is all that we need. But for the beginner, it's quite a handful. And so the way that the suttas were laid out in a way so that they were threads, so that when you got this, that, and the other sutta and began to put them together, it began to weave a fabric. And yet the suttas were never really translated into English that way. Most of the time when Pali was translated into English, it was translated into English by people who were trying to learn how to read Pali. And in the very beginning, they didn't even have a clue about Buddhism. And so Buddhism has come to the West not in a noble way, like it spread in Asia, but it's come in a piecemeal, haphazard way with some of the most important qualities of the practice missing. And that almost always, when a Westerner stays in Asia for 1, 2, 3, or 4 years, he didn't get it. I didn't get it until I was in Thailand about 20 years. It took me to figure things out, and I think that I was on the fast track like that. But now that I've kind of figured it out, and with Achan Po's insistence that we take this stuff to the internet so that the more complete Dhamma can be delivered in a more complete natural package. And so this is the way that we're teaching with this question and answer stuff, so that you can ask one question that actually opens the door into a whole new area for me to teach. So every every lecture to me seems like that I just give the same talk over and over and over again, and I'm giving it hundreds of times. But I've got people who are very close to me and have heard a lot of my talks, sometimes right over my shoulder, say, "Hey, well, that was a really good one." And I said, "But it's the same talk I gave yesterday." And he says, "Oh, no, it's not. This is different."
That's awesome.
And so there's missing pieces. But if we go back to anapanasati and recognize that and put that into the relationship of how to practice, then we begin to see how the path begins to be laid out, especially when we start reading those suttas, to understand that the process of sotapan is the process of the fulfillment of coming at least to the intellectual and emotional place of understanding that I've already got everything I need, and therefore I don't want anything else. I stop sucking because I'm already full of it. And that takes a lot of watching and a lot of sucking before we begin to realize, oh, I'm already full of it. And now I can finally stop sucking.
Can a layperson practicing anapanasati an hour a day realistically make any progress towards arahantship?
Let me ask you it. Let me answer that question by asking you a question in this regard. Do you think that by changing and operating your mind 1 hour a day and then leaving it in full of trash mode, back in automatic pilot, back in the crap for 23 hours a day, you're going to make a lot of progress at changing those old habits once an hour or an hour once a day?
No.
Do you really consider that a realistic goal?
I don't. No.
Then why would you ask me that question?
Most of the practice out there is sitting practice. There is
Absolutely, and that's why there's so much failure at it. Is number one, they're doing the sitting practice wrongly for the wrong reasons, getting the wrong values out of it. And then during the day, they're not actually doing what they need to be doing during the day with the values that they got off of the sitting cushion. That it really is a 1-2 punch. You really do have to bring your practice into full mode. All right, here's an example of what I'm talking about, and this is my favorite. There is a lot of good advice in the world. The Christians have some good advice. Lawyers have good advice. Doctors have good advice. Priests have good advice sometimes. And sometimes not. But the whole world is full of good advice. Buddha is absolutely full of good advice, starting with the dukkha, dukkha nirodha, and going right down through the pyramid and the entire structure of the teachings of Buddha, all fitting together into a nice package, is really, really good advice. The problem with good advice is that we need it. We need to take that advice at just the right moment, at just the time, and that's when we don't take that good advice. We miss the opportunity of taking the good advice because we forget. That's the problem with good advice, is nobody does it when they need it most. It is, in fact, the human version of Murphy's Law. Do you know Murphy's Law?
Yes. Anything that can go bad will go bad. Can go bad.
All right. And what's the second half? Oh, you don't even know the second half. That's the typical Western mentality, is they'll learn the first half of something and then they forget the most important part. Never mind.
Not important.
Exactly. Never mind. Start again. And that is Murphy's Law, is anything that can go wrong will go wrong, and it will go wrong at the worst possible moment. Okay? Oh, the O-rings. That Murphy's Law destroyed that rocket, which destroyed NASA in 1987. The engineers knew that the O-rings would freeze and therefore would not be usable. But they had already set it up. They had all the cameras and all of the actors and all of the teachers and everything there, and they were damned if they were going to call it off because of some cold weather. All right? They were not using their wisdom. They were using their suck. I suck on this. I want that rocket to go up, even if it kills everybody and destroys the process of NASA. That's the mentality. Things go wrong at the worst possible minute. Here's another example: is when does the computer fail at the new hotel? Does it fail on opening night? Nah, that's not a big deal. A lot of people there. But the computer system actually will fail when the hotel is full, at the worst possible moment. That's when it fails. When you need that computer system the most, when you've got the most money coming in, bang, it's gone. That's, in a nutshell, the problem with the Western Buddhism. Is because they're sitting on the cushion thinking that doing something on the cushion is going to get them in a position of doing the right thing at the right time throughout their life. And that doesn't happen. Mindfulness on the cushion does not equate to mindfulness outdoors until we make sure that it does. And the first thing we have to do is get away from this word mindfulness. Where did you ever hear the word mindfulness other than in relationship to Buddhism?
I think people use it to be, as they're alert, or they're paying attention. They use the word mindfulness.
But it's not part of our culture. Even when I was a small child, they would have the quality of mind your P's and Q's, but there was no such word, mindfulness. That's a manufactured word. And because it's a manufactured word, nobody knows exactly what it means. And so let's go back. Go ahead.
That word.
I'm sorry?
There's a lot of debate on what that word means, even.
Exactly so. I mean, why would there be any debate about it? Why would there be any debate about it?
It depends who you ask. The word sati.
Yes, the Pali word is sati, and there's certainly no question about what that word means. And not only that, but it is all over the place. It is a factor of the path. It's part of the Eightfold Noble Path. It's also the first of the 7 factors of enlightenment. We also have the Satipatthana. We also have anapanasati. There is sati, 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 sati all over the place. Why should there be any confusion about it? The reason is because Western people, especially in English, are thinking about Buddhism in their English mind rather than in Pali. The word sati actually means to remember.
Right.
And so that's the quality. That's why I was harping on that issue about doing the right thing, taking the good advice at just the right moment is when we remember to take that good advice. We need that sati right then. So sati is a skill to be developed. And that skill basically is sati is to remember to be here now, or to remember to start up the process of anapanasati, to remember to push the button. Now, the button that we're talking about here is the button that starts the process of anapanasati, but you're clicking a button in the sense of the button clicking itself is going to be of some value. But sati is the point of clicking the button, but if you don't do the right thing with it, it's not going to have much meaning. But it is good that you're at least remembering to start that clicker. But now we're going to start clicking a better button.
That's what it feels like. I am mindful, or I am aware most of the day, but I don't know what to do. I don't know.
Exactly.
I know, or I practice satipatthana with noting, Mahasi style.
First off, what I teach, first off, I'll say it like this. In a way, what I teach is the Mahasi method. I have been with U Pandita. I have done retreats with him. I have spent also time with him in Burma. I did not meet Mahasi because he was dead by the time I got there. That's some excuse, huh? But I did know Ubaken, and I did know Masayama, and I spent about 3 years with Goenka. And so I know that tradition, and that I also understand that it is almost always introductory Buddhism 101 over and over and over and over and over again, partly because of the market that they have and the market that they're introducing. To where with Bhikkhu Buddhadasa, his approach is we got to give the students the entire show so that they'll know how to practice, and they can practice correctly. Even if they don't remember half the show, they remember the parts of the show that are important because they learned how to put together. An example of that is everybody kind of has an idea of the results of what happened in certain stage plays. I'll give an example of that from Shakespeare, like The Merchant of Venice, with Shylock wanting a pound of flesh, and he wound up losing because of his lust. Or Hamlet, which, by the way, was, I would call Hamlet a Dhamma dude. To be or not to be is exactly the question that you're asking right now, too.
Sure. Did your practice change after leaving Goenka? And then I'm guessing you went and met Buddhadasa and practiced with him after Goenka?
Absolutely.
Hmm.
And in fact, it all had to do with the meeting of a Thai monk in Bodh Gaya when I was in Bodh Gaya. And it was about that time when I was absolutely finally at last willing to take the magic out of it all and go for the real thing.
So you cast aside your current practice and you decide to focus.
No, you're not the practice itself. In fact, I used much of what I had learned with Goenka when I taught at Wat Soan Mok.
Hmm.
No, when I'm talking about take the magic out of it, I'm talking about the magic, the actual crap that gets wrapped up in the teachings of the Buddha. That in fact the sutras are full of crap. And you have to watch for these cow pies about rebirth and all that kind of stuff.
You sound very pragmatic in that case.
Well, that's a new word. In fact, I know both sides of that fence.
Hmm.
There is a group called Pragmatic that has, let's say, Tucker Peck with his friend Noah Starbuck and Tim. That group that's in Seattle. that have websites, and they've got sitting groups and all kinds of things going that they call pragmatic Dhamma. But I didn't know that that Dan Ingram was so attached to that word pragmatic Dhamma until I saw him get eaten alive by some psychiatrist.
I gotta watch this. You gotta send me a link.
Yeah, well, it's well known. It's his 32-page answer.
Oh, I see what you're talking about. Yeah, that one that just came out recently.
Yes, sure. Exactly.
Do you think the practice, because the West culture is very, from what I've seen, very, what can we do with the practice, right? What practice leads us to result without the teachings themselves, right? You have.
Let's go back to that original thing. Why did you start to practice? What was something there for you? What was your original? You told me that before. Something happened by accident, huh?
I felt good, and then life sucked. Then I'm like, oh, well, there's a way to feel good. And
okay, let's just leave it at that. Okay, we'll just leave it at feel good. If the Western Dhamma was working correctly, then you'd have a whole lot of people walking around feeling good, wouldn't you?
That's a good point. That's a very good point.
Yeah, do you see anybody like that?
None other than me.
You're shaking of your head, gave that answer away. All right, so now we got something to work with. I will tell you there are plenty of nobles, plenty of successful practitioners of the Buddha Dhamma in the United States. Just most of them haven't bothered to speak English or to learn even to speak English, or that they have never had a teacher to teach them English. And so there's a great opportunity there. Now, where do these guys live? They live in the temples. You see, there are hundreds of Theravada and other, mostly it is Theravada because of the Vietnam War. And in Vietnam, the Theravada and Mahayana have kind of unified. So it doesn't really much matter whether you're going to Vietnam, Cambodia, Laos, Thai, Burmese, Sri Lankan, or whatever kind of temple that you have in the United States. The people who founded that temple and support that temple, they knew what they were looking for when they went to Asia to find monks to come be the abbot of their temple. Not only that, but by being a monk for 20 years, the Dhamma kind of seeps in whether you're actually practicing much or not.
Secondhand Dharma.
Pardon?
Secondhand Dharma. It's like cigarettes.
No, it's more like that. It's kind of funny when people would think that they would pick up a fish that's not wet. And yet the fish has never done anything to get wet. But it lives in a wet place.
Okay. All
right. So if the monk is living in the wet place and he's going to get wet inside, that's just the natural occurrence of it. And so it happens a lot to do with luck. And one of the things that a lot of Westerners don't understand, in fact, they think because it looks like that it's so hard and blah, 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 that enlightenment must be extremely difficult to get, blah, 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 blah. And therefore, there's not very many nobles around. And yet there are. There are many, many people in Thailand who fully understand the teachings of the Buddha. That in fact, it's not just Bhikkhu Buddha Dasa. I was very surprised to find when I was in the United States as a monk, by doing a lot of traveling, that the noble Dhamma was there. And that there were nobles in the United States, and that they know each other. But the Westerners don't bother to come talk to them. Because all the Western students who are lusting after this enlightenment that they've already been told they can't have. That's why some of them want it, is because they've been told they can't have it. And so they're going to the Jack Kornfields and crowd to spend money, thinking that if they spend their money at it, that they'll get some value. I mean, the Western capitalism is built upon value, that you get what you pay for it. The Asians have known that's a sham all along. It always has been. The car dealer never wants to get you what he tells you he's selling you. He only wants to give you what he can get away with.
Right.
And that's the problem with the Western model. So Dhamma for sale is a poison to Dhamma. It has to be given freely, and it has to be given in very small groups, and it has to be given through the question and answer in the natural way of doing things. So retreats don't work. Sitting 1 hour a day don't work. But today, when in our conversation, I want to get back into how to actually practice anapanasati. And then later we'll talk about how to take it off the cushion. But you got to be able to do it on the cushion first. Okay. So let's start then with the Four Noble, let's start with the Four Noble Truths, most specifically, the important part of the path. Now, with the Eightfold Noble Path, we can say that the Eightfold Noble Path that has to do with morality, right action, right speech, and right livelihood, are at least temporarily suspended when you're sitting in meditation. When you are sitting there in meditation, your sila is perfect. You're not robbing the bank or anything. You're just sitting. So your sila is perfect at that moment. So now we can get on to the better parts of the path. This is right view, right sati, right effort, and right attitude. Now, the right attitude comes mostly from the development of the right view. But right view comes first. Above all things, right view comes first. And as that view becomes purified, it becomes noble. Noble is a purification process, and purification here in this sense means gathering together, not removing things, but rather collections of things together. And what we're going to be collecting together are the jhana factors that we need. So the right view then comes first in the sense that it's better to watch the breath than it is to let the mind just wander around. That's the first right view. If we don't have that right view, we can't do any anapanasati.
Yeah, I have trouble, I think, using the breath as an object of meditation. I think I've developed really bad habit, and now every time I pay attention, my whole head feels like lightning, just sparking everywhere, and my eyes twitch, and it's very uncomfortable. Even just paying attention.
Oh, I was about to ask you, do you like that or not?
It's lovely. Let me tell you, it's awful.
Sorry?
It's awful. It's not a good experience. It makes me not want to pay attention to the breath.
Then why do you tense yourself up like that? That sounds to me like a very, very big case of wrong effort. If in fact the instructions is to relax, then how do you expect getting huge amounts of tensions and all in the head is going in the direction of relaxing?
I don't know how to relax then.
That's mainly because you've been working too hard. And you work too hard because you want to have a goal. That's why you suck at meditation, because you're sucking on it. You're trying to get something out of it. Now, one of the very classic, most important definitions of dukkha is wanting things we don't have. The other one would be putting up with things that are difficult to endure. And so that tension in the head is suffering and is brought about by wanting something you don't have, which I guess would be enlightenment.
Or jhana, yeah.
Or jhana, which is a very relaxed state. So when you understand what the jhana factors are, you might have a chance of getting it. But a tension headache is not jhana. In fact, that's exactly what Goenka was doing to himself when he went to start doing Vipassana. So at least you're going in the wrong direction of Goenka.
Mm.
So let's go back and start again with right view. The right view is then that it is better to be in the here now than it is in lost in thought, lost in the past, longing for the future, wanting things that you don't have, including enlightenment. That a state of being successful and joyful is superior to that. Is that not correct? Would that not be your right view?
Correct.
Okay. So now that we've got some right view established, now all we have to do is remember to do that. Sati. So when the mind wanders away from the present moment, and right now we're using the breath as an anchor. The anchor is because when we're sitting in meditation and the body's not doing much of anything, about the only thing that is happening is breathing. So if we start mindfully breathing, that's an advantage. Now, never mind about tension headaches that people give themselves because of wrong practice. But when you're practicing correctly, thinking about the breath actually begins to control the breath. That when it's on automatic pilot, it's done by the anterior cortex, but you can actually start thinking about your breath. But when you do, you automatically start to control it. And so with it under control, now we can manage it better than the automatic method that's been operating before. The automatic pilot, the anterior cortex of the brain, what we call the reptile brain, has been in charge of the breath. And it's the super conservative part of us. All your liberal is in front, and all your heavy duty conservative is in the back anterior cortex, and it's all designed around survival. So it's the last thing to shut down, etc. It's the very most conservative point, and it conserves the breath. By conserving the breath, even though the oxygen levels when they measure it seems to be about the same at about 100% or so, still the reptilian brain is in charge. And what we're going to start doing is we're going to wake up with sati and say, oh no, I'm going to start experiencing things directly. We're going to wake up the frontal cortex by start taking deep breaths. By taking deep breaths, we also oxygenate the body. We begin to wake it up, make it alive, and we become more human. Now that's one of the qualities of it. The second quality is that when we recognize that the mind, or we start meditation, we recognize that the mind had wandered away. We have the right view that will become noble soon enough. That right view is it's better to be relaxed and comfortable and happy than it is to be full of tension. When we recognize that the mind has wandered away, that's the wake up. The sati comes, and the sati comes in the experience of the mind. Experiencing the mind then